I will be wearing a different outfit. I will have parked in a different place. But you see, that's where we get into the complex trauma
Right.
because then they wear a different outfit, they park in a different place, and then they're assaulted again. And so now what? Now who am I? Now I'm in this identity crisis. Well, I don't know who I am. How do I continue to live in a world where bad things happen to good people that don't deserve it?
Hi, everyone. I am Julie Edmonds, your host of Channeled, tapping into the wisdom of your soul. Hello, and welcome to Channeled, tapping into the wisdom of your soul. Today, I have an incredible guest whose work lives at the crossroads of science, soul, and subconscious transformation. He's a licensed mental health counselor and clinical hypnotherapist. And he's known worldwide as a dream interpreter and healer who helps people unlock hidden messages of their subconscious. With a rich background in trauma, anxiety, neurodivergence, and deep inner work, he's helped thousands reclaim their power and realign with their true path. Let's welcome Jesse Lyon. Hi, Jesse.
Hello, thanks, Julie. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I'm honored to have you. I'm excited to talk to you. So let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in all of this work.
Oh man, how did it happen? What's the superhero origin story, right? I'm a licensed counselor, right? I own a private practice here in Central Florida called Lion Counseling, and we've got 5 locations, like in Wekiva and Winter Park, downtown Orlando. We're in Miami, we're in Daytona Beach, and that was always the start of it. When I mean, I guess if you want to go back, I never really thought about being a counselor. When I'm in high school, we all hit that existential crisis of, great, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so at that point, I was that weird kid who loved philosophy. I was homeschooled kindergarten through 12th grade. So shout out to my mom for educating me and my 3 younger siblings. And I love philosophy
Wow.
books. That was my enjoyment. Like that was my way to kind of take a break from things, to just get some new ideas. And so I always wanted to study philosophy, but you can't get a degree in philosophy, you ain't gonna make no money. Like how are you gonna support a family on that? And so for me, counseling was a way to deal with the same sort of existential issues, but in a way that does have some kind of practical benefit, like practical job that I could do for the rest of my life. And so, well, I went to school to be a counselor. And while I was in school to be a counselor, I took a course only because I had a classmate who was interested in a hypnotherapy course. And so they said, "Hey, Jesse, I found this hypnotherapy course. It's in Castleberry, and I want to go take it, but I don't want to go by myself. Will you go with me?" And I'm like, you know, broke 20 something. Um, and I was like, sure, but I don't have the money to pay for it. She's like, no, don't worry. I'll pay for you to go. Her name's Teresa. Shout out to Teresa.
Wow.
And so I
Wow.
took the course with her because she didn't want to do it by herself, and it changed my life. And I'm
Oh, I
so grateful.
I believe that. Go on.
Yeah, so grateful to have taken it so early in my education, and so young too. I started college, my undergrad, when I was 19, because, well, no, sorry, 17, because that was very popular for homeschool kids, is to start college early. And so I interviewed and got accepted into the graduate program at 19. They almost didn't let me in, and I talked with the professors later, and they said, we talked about you a long time, Jesse. But we decided to let you in because you showed drive and passion. And if you showed that much drive and passion in the things you've done already, we knew that you would give the same dedication to becoming a counselor. And I did. And so I took the hypnotherapy course. I was very young, and it changed my perspective on things. Specifically because it helped me understand that there's a subconscious strata that people are experiencing in their lives that is motivating, driving, influencing all of the decisions that they make. And because I had that grounding as I was still going through the rest of my graduate program, it informed the rest of what I did. And so I quickly found my place in working with complex trauma, specifically like dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personalities, schizophrenia, and all those individuals who have gone through things time and time again throughout their life that have stripped away their identity. And I grew my practice that way. But then COVID came. And here I am, just started out venturing on my own, beginning a private practice with in-person clients, and the world shuts down and nobody can come see me in person. I'm like, great, it's been a good run, guys. Time to throw in the towel. The business has gone up in flames. I was like, gonna have to find a new job. And I asked myself, where are the people that I want to help right now? They're stuck at home looking at their phones and they're looking at social media. So I said to myself, I'll start making some videos. Like, if I got nothing else to do, and it's a long shot, but I'll start to make videos. And so I was watching Gary V on Instagram. If anyone's ever heard of him, he's a very popular business strategist kind of guy, marketer, advertiser. And he said, if you're not on TikTok, you need to be on TikTok, and you need to be making 3 to 5 videos a day. So I was like, okay, if Gary V says it, and that's the shot I've got to save this thing and to continue in the career that I'm motivated and dedicated to, I'll do it. So I did. I made 3 videos a day, Monday through Friday, for years. And it took off. I started making content about hypnosis and about dreams and the way that we as hypnotherapists will use a similar subconscious language that dreams do, and that you can use dreams to help understand what's going on in somebody's mental health. It made videos about that and it blew up. So now, 2.4 million followers on TikTok later, here I am still talking about dreams and helping therapists, counselors, and individuals learn to take just the nuggets of wisdom that our dreams give us and incorporate them into their therapeutic work. And so we can go into a lot of that, and I'm sure we will over the course of the podcast. But if you want the origin story, that's really how I got to the place that I am today.
Well, wow, that's a good story, Jesse. I'm fascinated because, we have dream interpreters that come on the podcast or, they just do that for a living. And then we have therapists and hypnotherapists but you've combined, it's almost like dream therapy, and so it's like,
Yes.
so tell us more, like what happens when someone comes to you? How do you heal them with the dream therapy? Or what's the healing process or the process?
There, at a very basic level, when you go to sleep, your prefrontal cortex has a significant reduction in activity. Some would say it basically turns off. Now, the prefrontal cortex is our logical language processing center. It's the executive functioning part of the brain. It does all of your analytical nuts and bolts kind of work as you go throughout your day. But if you've ever heard that saying, you ever heard that one where they say we only use 10% of our brain? Yeah. It's false. You use 100% of your brain. But the nugget of truth that that misstatement comes from is that your prefrontal cortex is about 12% of your brain mass. And so the other 88% of your brain is what we would call subconscious because you are not consciously aware of it. And there's nothing mystical or spooky about that. It's nothing
Okay, so
nothing
wait, hang on.
metaphysical.
Hang on. So we use 10 to 12% of our conscious brain, and then the other part of our brain is subconscious.
Yeah, 12% of your brain is prefrontal cortex. The rest is operating automatically.
Mm.
And that's just science. Now some people will take that, like the spiritual side of the social media sphere, will take that and run with it and, astral travel, metaphysics. And listen, that's great. If that's something that's a part of you and what you believe in, I love that. But I just try and stay in my lane. I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not a pastor. I am a scientist and a clinician. I work under a license with the Department of Health. So I'm going to tell you what it tells you about your health, and I'll leave the spiritual stuff to the spiritualists and sometimes poke fun at them a little bit. It's good content. But that's really where I live is I think we have thrown away the use of dreams as a therapeutic tool because it's not taught, because it's not maybe as sexy as they want it to be. I don't know, but I think there is so much there that's lost when we don't incorporate our dreams into therapy, specifically because there's very little other times in your life when your conscious thoughts do not get in the way of your subconscious truth. But when you sleep, it turns off. And then all this communication spontaneously happens through your dreams. It's the same method that makes hypnosis effective. Because in hypnosis, we calm down the prefrontal cortex, we get somebody to focus and enter into a trance so they can explore what's going on in their subconscious. You're doing that every night when you go to sleep. Just bring in that content into therapy, and then you can utilize hypnosis together with it and go back into the dream and process some of those things. It's some of the most rewarding, incredible work that I've ever gotten the privilege to work with, and it's definitely transformed me as a human and the clients that I work with. So
Yeah,
yeah, I guess I
I
do
can
stand at
imagine.
that crossroads.
No, I could imagine. I mean, just being, doing hypnotherapy myself, it's changed my life completely. Like, so when you look at a dream, do you approach it more like a therapist or like an intuitive interpreter or somehow what do you do?
I think the best way to describe what I do is to think about it like remember those ink blot tests? They don't do those anymore. Like a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
You t tell me what you see. It dreams the same way. It's this canvas that the mind gets to paint on. And if I can understand your relationship to the images on that canvas, I can understand at a deeper level you as a person. Now we can go into that, and if you want to explore that, I gave a lecture at the very last International Conference on Dream Research about the four stages that the brain goes through in resolving trauma through dreams.
Oh
And what a
wow,
lot
I
of people
would love to
don't,
hear that. Can you
yeah,
in like if you did a lecture, I'm sure it was like an hour long. So can you do it in like a couple minutes?
it was an hour long, yes. But yeah, and it's on YouTube. You can check it out on the channel somewhere. Um,
Give us the short of it all.
the short of it is the very first symptom that shows up in PTSD are nightmares. And a lot of people miss that symptom. A lot of clinicians, doctors miss that symptom, and they forget about the nightmares, not understanding that that is the very first marker for PTSD developing. And so if you can notice the patterns that are in the dream and early intervene in PTSD, you can have such powerful and rapid results because you're paying attention to where the mind is speaking. And
Oh,
so there's kind of four stages to how this works. It's like a bell curve, right? So if you imagine kind of like a standard bell curve. The mind starts with um, trauma rehearsal. It goes through the event that was traumatic and rehearses it literally because the brain's trying to keep you safe. It's replaying that nightmare, that experience over and over again because it's looking for a solution. It's thinking, we've never experienced something like this. We didn't know that this was a possibility, that something bad like this could happen. And so we're going to replay it over and over because we need to make sure that that never happens again.
hmm. But
From
then it
there,
gets stuck, right? Because it's almost like when you have a thought that's just looping and looping and looping, and you're like, I can't get this out of my mind.
yes. Well, and it does. It does get stuck. The best way to put it. It gets stuck because the brain sometimes wants to do things that are not possible. And what this looks like very practically is somebody comes in and sits down on my couch and they tell me about maybe like a sexual trauma, for example, as they were assaulted. And what it will often look like is them telling me, well, I shouldn't have been wearing that outfit. Or I should have taken a friend with me to the bathroom, or I shouldn't have parked where I parked. And in those moments, what the brain is trying to do is it's trying to maintain control.
Hmm.
We as human beings really don't like it when we're out of control. Chaos and being out of control outside of the structure that we're used to living in that keeps us safe is very dangerous and scary. If you think all the way back to like caveman days, if I venture outside of my cave and what I know, that's where I'm most likely to be killed. And so that stays with us. I want to stay in control. I want to control all the variables as much as I can. But sometimes it'll make a very unfortunate trade when it does that. And it will say, well, if I can just blame myself for what happened. That will give me a sense of control because next time I can be sure that that assault doesn't happen because I will be wearing a different outfit. I will have parked in a different place. But you see, that's where we get into the complex trauma
Right.
because then they wear a different outfit, they park in a different place, and then they're assaulted again. And so now what? Now who am I? Now I'm in this identity crisis. Well, I don't know who I am. How do I continue to live in a world where bad things happen to good people that don't deserve it? And it's a tough question to answer. And the brain tries to answer it by blaming yourself. But that's not the helpful solution. The truth is sometimes things happen that you don't deserve. But the hope is that you can continue and persist on despite that being a reality of us being alive. And so that's kind of the first thing. The brain gets stuck trying to blame yourself. Play it over and over again. How do I make sure that this never happens again? And the truth is, it could. We have to
And
build a
that's the
sense of
nightmares.
identity.
So the looping thoughts or the nightmares are like the first step. Okay.
That's where you see the looping thoughts begin in their very first start. Yeah.
All right. So number one, and then now what's number two?
So
Next.
as somebody gets better, you can track their progress through four different categories. So one, that's the very first, no progress, right? No recovery, trauma rehearsal. Then the brain moves up into metaphorical nightmares. So what I'm kind of doing here is labeling like two lines. You have progress of health, right? From unhealthy to healthy, like on the bottom, like a XY graph. And then on the Y graph, or the up and down side, you have literal and metaphorical. And so what the brain does is it rehearses the trauma literally as a nightmare. And then as a person recovers, that nightmare stays a nightmare, but it becomes metaphorical. Instead of being assaulted, I'm fighting a dragon, or I'm being chased by a grizzly bear, or I have home invaders breaking through the windows in my house. Well, that's not what actually happened, but it's a metaphor, right? You see, we're getting into the hypnosis, suggestive imagery side of things. And then there's something beautiful that happens in step number three. They cross over into good dreams, metaphorical hope.
Ooh.
And so the dreams look like a person being chased by a grizzly bear, but they find a spear and they fight back against the grizzly bear. So when that marker happens, that's an amazing sign for somebody that they're making progress to find their personal abilities again. They're finding their sense of agency. And then the final recovery step, phase number four, is literal positive dreams. So they go back
Hmm.
down to literal. I'm dreaming about having a successful interview tomorrow, or that date that I've got coming up next week. I'm dreaming about that date going well and how we're going to enjoy each other's company. And so you can track it from literal nightmares, metaphorical positive dreams to literal positive dreams. And that's the process. And people bounce around, as we're
Yeah.
working through different layers and going deeper. But you can see very literally, and it's bizarre to me that we don't use this very well researched, very well understood communication from the subconscious mind to help people get better and to know exactly what sort of interventions they need because the brain is saying, "Hey, I need this next. This is where I'm stuck." And I think that's what makes the therapy that I do so much more impactful than some of my contemporaries.
Well, that is fascinating. Is there a timeline to all this, or is everybody different, or is it based on the severity of the trauma, or it doesn't really that thing?
It does differ depending on the person. The timeline can be very short or very, very long. And the thing that I've found is the best indicator of how long is how much their identity was attached to that thing that was traumatized.
Hmm. I have a question
And
for you with that, though.
go for it.
How people attach their identity to that traumatic experience, do they think of that as familiar and maybe want to recreate it and maybe recreate it to try to get over it or recreate it unconsciously, thinking that they're, like you said, in control?
I think a different way to think about it, and perhaps the more authentic way for me to think about it, is there can be a bunch of ways that the brain tries to cope. Being familiar and trying to recreate it is one of those coping strategies. There's many coping strategies that the brain will try and use, that a person will try and use to deal with trauma, and that's one of them. But there's many. Um, like I often say, being healthy is simple, but hard to do. Being unhealthy is easy, but it's incredibly complex. The
Mm,
mental hoops that the brain jumps through in order to try and navigate through these difficult situations gets incredibly nuanced. And so rather than taking the time to like document every possible way the brain comes up with to, get tangled, it's a lot easier to focus on the positive direction or the healthy way of going, which is a hypnosis principle. You focus on what you want, not what you don't want.
right. That's saying, oh, the tangled web we weave, right?
Yes, that's what I'm talking
Okay.
about.
So, so what if someone doesn't remember their dreams? I'm sure you have other ways to help them. I mean, hypnosis being one.
Yeah, hypnosis helps a lot. I often warn people about that. I'm like, hey, we're touching on your subconscious here. So if you notice, and you know how hypnosis is, it's a little bit of a suggestion too. I'm saying you might notice you're going to dream more. I'm suggesting that they're going to dream more. You might notice that you remember your dreams now, and that is one way. But we know from the research into sleep medicine that every time you sleep, you dream. And actually, it was believed that we only dreamed in REM sleep, but we now know that you dream in all phases of sleep. But the dreams can be different in each of those phases. So anybody who says that they don't dream is just not remembering their dreams. And there's some science
Read.
to why that is.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear the science behind that.
Yeah, it's about the personality of the individual who's struggling to remember their dreams. When we wake up, you have to remember that the brain is turning back online its prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that helps us determine what's important, what we need to focus on. And so when you wake up, here's all this stuff. Here's all this subconscious weird dreams that may affect our day. They could be highly emotional, especially with trauma. And so when you wake up and that prefrontal cortex turns back online, the brain says, what's all this crap? Forget it.
Get
And
rid of
those
it.
15 minutes when you wake up are the most critical ones. If you don't sit there and consciously say to yourself, I'm going to sit, I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to let my brain remind me of what I dreamed of so I can write it down. And you start to set intention and purposefully remember it. You are telling yourself, yes, this is important. I would like to start remembering it. And you will. I've never had somebody who can't get their dreams back. It's just we get too busy. I jump right on my phone, check my emails, check my calendar, and so the brain's like, okay, we got no space to remember our dreams. We got work today,
Yeah,
and
no,
that's
I
where we
know
lose it.
people, they say, I don't remember my dreams because I don't even care, I'm like, well, then you won't, not
Yes.
that attitude. But I always try, I remember my dreams. I feel like I have 5,000 dreams a night. There are times I wake up and I can't remember anything, but trying to interpret them, I've noticed trends throughout my life, but this is interesting, this four step. So obviously not all of our dreams are trying to heal us. Is it just some of it just in the waking, you know, tell me about a dream that if it's just a positive dream. Is it still giving us a message?
Yeah. Yeah. So the brain is accomplishing two important tasks when you sleep. REM sleep is about creating new neural connections. Deep sleep, which is the other four phases of sleep, is trying to deepen the connections we already have. So I'm trying to get better at the stuff I know and to learn new things. So every dream that you have can be related to one of those two tasks. Is this me putting together the stuff that I know in new ways to come up with a new idea? Or is this me trying to get better at the stuff I already know? And so, like, think about that trauma nightmare, right? My brain is traveling the same neural pathway of that experience that's happened over and over again, searching for a new solution. It gets stuck in
Yeah.
that area. I like to break down dreams into four categories, which can be helpful for kind of understanding what each dream is trying to tell us about. And so that
What
can be helpful.
what are the four categories?
The four categories are wish fulfillment dreams. Those are your good ones, right? It's like, what do I want to happen? And my brain is practicing that happening. A little kid goes to bed and he's dreaming about the football game that's coming up or the baseball game is coming up, and he dreams about hitting the home run. It's a wish fulfillment dream. His brain is imagining, what's that going to be like? I've never hit a home run and had the whole team rush on the field and celebrate me, so I'm imagining what that's going to be like so I can be ready for when that happens. Um, those are wish fulfillment dreams. Maybe you have that dream where you're making out with your celebrity crush, and it's a wish fulfillment dream. Um, so that's one. Then you have physical dreams, which are the types of dreams where our body is speaking to us through imagery. Uh, a great example of this is a lot of people who have sleep apnea will actually dream about drowning because literally the sensation is I'm choking while I sleep. And so the brain's like, what's this weird feeling? It's kind of like we're drowning. Let's give him visualizations of drowning in water. And so it's actually the body saying, hey, something's going wrong here. And there's actually many cases where individuals have dreamed about things and then gone to their doctor and said, hey, I had this dream, I want to get a mammogram done because I had this weird dream. And they find out they had breast cancer and their dream knew it before the doctors did. So, wish fulfillment.
Because your mind knew that. The mind knew that your
Yeah,
body had that, and it's
something's
telling
wrong
you.
here.
Yeah.
hmm So there's the wish fulfillment in the physical. Then there's the venting dreams. Venting dreams are nightmares. My mind is trying to release unprocessed and negative emotion. And that could be so many different types. And then the last one is insight dreams. Insight dreams are when we come up with new ideas. Google was started because the founder had a dream about all computers in the world being connected. That's how he founded Google. Charlie Puth, the famous musician, often talks about how he wakes up in the morning with a riff in his head, and that's how he writes his songs. And so
Yeah.
there's so many of those where dreams are giving us insight into the future and solving problems while we sleep because it finally clears out the criticism of the conscious mind.
Nice. And so when our conscious mind doesn't match our subconscious mind, this is where we have identity crisis, or when we question who we are, because what you're trying to think of and what your subconscious mind is. Because I think about, I really want to do this thing, but then something's stopping me because I have some fears in my subconscious mind. Explain that.
Which part? The identity crisis?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I asked you a lot of things. All right.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
it's great. It's great. Well, identity crisis could be part of it, but it might be some other things too. Certainly, there are a lot of things that can go wrong and happen when the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are not working together like they should. It's like a marriage. I mean, marriage therapy is probably the best um, illustration that I could give, where each partner performs different roles. They have different talents and abilities. And if we don't cultivate appreciation for each of those differences and roles, you're just going to end up fighting. And that's what we do inside of ourselves all the time. We get mad at ourselves. Why am I not more insightful? Why am I not doing better? Why am I not more critical, analytical, whatever?
Mhm.
And
Why
it's,
can't I lose weight? Yeah.
why can't I lose weight? Why can't I quit smoking? Whatever it is. Yeah, so that could be identity, but it could be a lot of other things too. Just
Yeah.
not accomplishing your goals. Any symptom, I really think, like mental health symptom, can be traced to some part of my mind not cooperating together.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I find this fascinating. So can you walk us through a typical dream interpretation session? Is it all
Yeah.
those four things, or go on?
Well, I'm kind of giving you the thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
I very seldom will teach a client all that stuff.
Right.
It's not important. When I'm sitting down with somebody on my couch, I'm like, I'm here for you, and say, yeah, I'm not just going to lecture. Though I do lecture, it's a different hat. When I'm working with a client, they'll usually come in, they'll tell me about a dream, and we walk through the dream first. Give me the full story. And as they give the full story, I ask them about what's emotionally most significant to you. Like which is the part of the dream where you feel the most emotional intensity. And that usually clues us in to where the subconscious wants us to focus. And then we look into it. We make associations, kind of free association. We talk about how it felt. We change perspectives. And so there's a lot of techniques that you can use, but then we start to play with it. And playing with it is probably the best way to think about it because that part of our brain is very childlike. It's
Mm.
very fun and creative and collaborative. And so we just start to toy with it. What does it look like from this perspective? What would happen if it changed in this way? And we look at each of the symbols and make some connections with them, and that guides us into translating that subconscious communication into conscious language.
Wow. Wow, that's neat.
It
That's
usually
really,
takes about the full hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially if someone's trying to articulate a dream that just, it flashes and changes and dissolves into this and that. And, there's a lot of moving parts sometimes. Um, what
Yeah.
about when they dream of or feel like they're visited by a dead relative? Do you have those types of things?
Oh, yeah. And some people truly believe that it is the spirit of their lost loved one that's coming back to visit them. And I love that. I think if that's what somebody personally believes with their spiritual beliefs, that's fantastic. From the science side of things, the way that I think about it and what I've seen in my clinical practice is that we as human beings develop our identity through our relationships with others. And so, really, our loved ones who have been lost, a little bit of them lives inside of us because of our connection to them. I am a little bit of my mother because I saw how structured she was. And a lot of the things that I'm able to do with my business and the structure is because of my mom. My dad has his side of things, like creative and impulsive and following his passions. And so I get that part of him is a part of me, my grandparents, my relatives. And so whenever somebody comes to visit me in my dream, it's usually a part of myself. There's
Mm.
many parts of ourself. I typically operate from like a Jungian psychoanalysis perspective, if you're familiar with that, which talks about the archetypes and all these characters that live inside of our heads. And so each of those loved ones who have been lost represent a part of our identity that's coming to share something with us that we need in that moment. It's like the brain is pulling on what would grandma have said in this situation because grandma always gave the best advice. So it dreams about grandma, and then grandma says something or does something that helps us figure out what the next step is because she's still there. Who we are today is shaped by those loved ones that we've spent time with and developed relationships with.
Um, okay, so for listeners trying to tap into their dreams or just their subconscious for insight, is there one piece of advice you can get them just to get started besides just trying to remember their dreams?
You know, and I know you said besides, but I'm gonna double down on that because that is the best piece of advice. Learning to remember your dreams. And man, I mean, this is emotional for me. It's so easy to ignore parts of who we are. It's so even rewarded by the culture that we're in, by the people that we're around, by our families. Gosh, I mean, we're recording this on the Monday after Thanksgiving, and I'm just filled with clients in my own experiences of falling back into those family trances, falling back into those dysfunctional family experiences, and how those impact our life. And so, it's really easy to forget and to ignore and to criticize those parts of ourselves that are deeper. But those parts of ourselves are like a little child. I've got a 3-year-old back at home that I love to pieces. He's my whole world. Him and his mama, and I think about him and I watch as other parents will criticize their kids, or the little kid will come up and say, "Hey, daddy, daddy, look at this." And the dad's on their phone or watching TV or ignores them, or instead of meeting that child in that emotional moment as they're looking for connection, will give a correction or a criticism instead of meeting them in that moment. And that's the opportunity that we have with our own minds. And we'll often repeat those cycles that we've experienced from growing up, where we treat ourselves the same ways that we were treated growing up, not prioritizing, not listening, and not giving ourselves that emotional space that we need. And so, yes, remember your dreams, but it's much deeper than that. Taking 5 minutes to sit in your bed and breathe and let those dreams come back to you and set intention that whatever my mind's going to give me, I'm going to receive with open hands and a heart of appreciation and gratitude. is a fundamental shift that will change everything about your life. So write them down. Keep a journal by your bed. Keep your notepad open on your phone, and when you wake up, breathe. You are more important than the tasks that have to happen that day and the emails that came in while you were sleeping. And if you don't teach yourself that and save time to experience that every day, life is going to be very difficult.
I couldn't agree with you more. That was said so beautifully, Jesse. Um,
Thanks. It's
and
emotional for me. It's important.
yeah, no, I understand because just through the own hypnotherapy work and me connecting to my own thoughts and my own things that I used to think about myself that weren't helping me that I don't anymore because it was on autopilot. I love my subconscious mind. I love closing my eyes. I found it fascinating that you said earlier that we don't just dream in the REM state. And I agree. I mean, I don't just agree, I experience that. There are times I can just close my eyes. I'm not even sleeping, but I'm dreaming
Yeah.
and know in that complete, was it the delta state or whatever state it is our brains are in?
Yeah, there's a few states and there's different waves, and so like alpha, beta, delta waves fluctuate their intensity. But yeah, we dream in every phase of sleep, and we will have that subconscious imagery pop up. I mean, I know everybody listening to this podcast right now can think of a time when they had a random thought pop into their head. And they're like, what the hell is that? It's like, well, it's the same properties as dreaming. Your mind's trying to say something. It's like, we need help.
Yeah.
So here's an image, but it's like a toddler, because the prefrontal cortex doesn't even begin to develop until 8 years old. And so your subconscious brain operates like a child between 3 and 8. And so when that child comes and shows you a picture, when your brain gives you an image, instead of dismissing it and being like, "Ugh, I'm crazy," be like, "Wow, thank you. I'm so proud of myself for giving myself this helpful tool to try and overcome the obstacle that I'm facing right now. I'm going to open it up with appreciation and respect. And if we can't show our respect to ourselves, how do we
And
expect
we
to
shouldn't
make the
be
world a better
afraid of it.
place?"
We should not be afraid of it.
No, dreams are very safe. It's the safest thing that you can do. Nothing hurts you in a dream. Now, it'll rattle you because it's some shit that you need to work on, but you're not going to get hurt in a dream.
Can you
Doesn't happen
explain
that way.
lucid dreams? There are times I realize I'm dreaming, so I was like, oh wait, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, there's a lot of research into lucid dreaming right now. It's very fascinating. If anyone wants to look it up, it's the International Association for the Study of Dreams. I'm a member of it, and I usually speak at every year's conference. A lot of the research lately has been on lucid dreaming because there's a very interesting parallel. And I asked a researcher, I was like, why is everybody so interested in lucid dreaming? I don't understand. They're like, well, we're using lucid dreaming and an understanding of lucid dreaming to explore human consciousness. In a world of artificial intelligence and asking the deeper questions of what does it really mean to be conscious, lucid dreaming gives us a very unique brain state to try and understand on a fundamental level what human consciousness is. So there's a lot of really cool research into it. But basically, a lucid dream, as scientists, we had to come up with a definition. You can't study anything if you can't define what it is. How do I know if I'm looking at the thing I'm trying to research? And so the scientific definition for lucid dream is any time you're dreaming and you're aware of your dreaming. So some people can control their dreams, some people can change their dreams. But that's not necessary for it to count as a lucid dream. Anytime that you're aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming is a lucid dream. And there's some really cool research if somebody wants to look into it. But really, some people just have a natural ability to do that because they're a little more introspective. They're a little bit more in touch with their subconscious. I would imagine that's why you have the lucid dreams because you're very in touch with your subconscious. And other people just struggle to do it. But anybody can be taught how to do it. It just does take a little practice for those who maybe don't do it naturally.
I have this reoccurring dream that I'm waiting tables again. That's what I did when I was in college, like 30 years ago.
Ooh.
So finally, I was like, wait, hold on, I'm going to take the fire hydrant. I'm like, whoosh, all over the whole.
Yes,
Like, I'm like, okay, I can do whatever I want. This is
that's
interesting.
awesome. That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
it's been great, Jetsy. This has been a wonderful podcast. Can you tell us for the listeners where we can find you?
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. If anyone wants their dreams interpreted, wants to learn more about what I do and sort of pioneering this new way of doing therapy that heals trauma in such a profound way, you can find me on all the social media apps at Lion Mental Health, Lyon, like my last name. I think the best way to get in touch with me and to connect, I have a weekly newsletter that I put out. There's no sales in it. I'm not asking for anything. But every week I take a deep dive into a certain dream symbol, a certain dream theme, and I explain what your subconscious is trying to teach you based on that symbol popping up in your dream. And so there's like a whole over 100 emails I've written. And so you can
Fascinating.
search the archive for your dream symbol and find out what I've said about it. And you can see the new ones that come out every week. But yeah, find it through the links in my bio at Lion Mental Health, Lyon Mental
I'm gonna
Health.
I'm gonna check that out, and we'll also put it in the show notes. So thank you so much, Jesse. It's been a great podcast hour with you, and thanks for anyone listening to Channel Tapping into the Wisdom of Your Soul. If you like this, share it and subscribe, and we'll see you again. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks so much, Julie.